Hello. These days are flying by, people. It is Wednesday. So we're doing a little lab decode today. Just going to talk about, well, I can't help myself when I get excited about something. I was going to talk about 3 labs, A1C, CRP, and a TSH. But I have to add in a few extra just because they're kind of my favorite, a little bit of my favorite. I like them all. But I want you to understand what they are and how they play into what we're talking about this month, Sugar Steady, right? Our Sugar Steady playbook. That is what we're talking about all of October. A1C, that is your 3-month average of your daily blood sugar level. So if you're looking at your labs in your CMP, in your chemistry labs, you have fasting blood sugar. Usually we like it less than 100 for sure. 90s, 80s, ideal. As this rises, that it's kind of like the threshold, right? I always talk about the drops in the bucket. So as many things come into play, but as your daily blood sugar rises, so does then your hemoglobin A1C. When in traditional medicine, when blood sugar gets above 100 a day, when your fasting blood sugar gets above 100, 101, if it's that a couple of times, that is when they're going to order an A1C, unless you're at high risk for diabetes or anything like that. Okay, so blood sugar, we want it 90, 80s, fasting blood sugar. Hemoglobin A1C, the traditional value, when it hits 5.7, you are pre-diabetic. And, it's kind of funny because you either have diabetes or you don't have diabetes, right? It's kind of like being, pre-pregnant, that you can't be a little pregnant, right? And you can't. So as your A1C, as your blood sugar and A1C rises, so does your risk to developing type 2 diabetes. Remembering type 2 is lifestyle driven. I don't care who says anything different. It is lifestyle driven, and I have taken it. We can see improvement, even if you're on medications for it. Okay, so fasting blood sugar, ideal 80s. A1C, ideal less than 5.4, ideal. I talk perfection. I say I practice Goldilocks medicine. When it gets to 5.7, you are knocking on metformin's door, meaning you're going to need a medication very soon. At 6, when that A1C gets around 6, you're going on a medication. You have full blown. Okay, so those are the 2 metabolic indicators. The extra one I'm throwing in because I say all the time, it is the metabolic lab that no one is getting in traditional medicine, and that is fasting insulin. Fasting insulin with these 3 numbers, well, with blood sugar and fasting insulin, you can get a calculation called a HOME-IR score, and that is your homeostatic insulin resistant calculation. And there's a calculation. If you're interested, let me know, but most people never have a fasting insulin level to even get this calculation. The normal level of insulin is 4 to 25. So huge window. Again, this goes into the school of thought that in traditional medicine, you either have a disease or you don't have a disease. And these windows of normal that are so broad, for example, 4 to 25, that's a very big window. Within that window is when shit happens, okay? That's when all this stuff starts to build up. And when your fasting insulin is as low as 6, right close to the low end of normal, right? As it reaches 6, we see signs of insulin resistance. This is, if PCOS, estrogen resistance, sluggish thyroid, brain fog, that weight that just won't budge. I used to laugh and I used to say I could take a deep breath and gain 2 pounds. Well, that's what happens with insulin resistance. Now, I talked about this a little bit the other day. Getting insulin down is a different avenue than getting blood sugar down. So those are 2 different things, not necessarily one and the same. But with those are the 3 most metabolic numbers, in my opinion. So if you're not getting a fasting insulin, ask for it. Next is a CRP. This is a C-reactive protein. Get a high sensitivity one. This is your very first indicator of systemic inflammation. I like this less than 1. When we see it start to creep up, anything above 1, getting into this is when you start to get autoimmune diseases as that CRP rises. Now, it is a general inflammation indicator, so it's a general number. Another one is an ESR, which is a sedimentation rate. Those are the 2 that usually they get first if your doctor suspects that you've got some kind of autoimmune disease. It also looks at your risk for cardiovascular disease. Because again, when we start peeling back all of the layers of, diagnoses, and when you start to look at the absolute bottom and want to find the root cause of everything, and I rarely say everything, the root cause of everything is inflammation. Inflammation is the flame that triggers just about anything that's going to happen in your body. That's also fueled by mineral imbalance and depletion. Okay, so CRP, very, very important. You want that number less than 1. Lovely. So even if you're talking about thyroid, I've been on a thyroid rampage lately. Even when we're talking about optimizing your thyroid, if you're concerned about Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or, an autoimmune Graves' disease, an autoimmune thyroid issue, that CRP is going to be elevated also. So the TPO and your thyroid body antiglobulins, hi Jackie, they'll be elevated as well, but that CRP will be elevated, and it will be the first thing that's elevated. So first thing to watch for. Next is TSH. And I feel like a broken record talking about TSH. So TSH is something that we get done. It's usually the only thyroid hormone that gets tested on an annual physical. And that is your thyroid stimulating hormone. It is not put out by your thyroid gland. It is put out by your pituitary gland in your brain. Pituitary gland puts out thyroid stimulating hormone, which tells your thyroid gland to put out T4. Hi, Marissa. Put out T4, which is your stored form of thyroid hormone. Your body can't use it until it breaks it down into T3. That happens in your liver, in your gut, and a couple other places. But that is why getting more than a TSH is so important. I've seen a lot lately that providers will get a TSH and a T4. Okay, still not even close to the picture. So if you can only get, sometimes I feel like, I'm playing let's make a deal with what either a provider will get, because I have had patients come to me and say that their provider just refused to order them because they didn't need them, or the insurance just wouldn't cover it. So it is like, let's make a deal. If you can only get 2, if your provider won't get the TSH, T3, T4, reverse T3, then get T4, I don't want to say is irrelevant, but it's not as important in my opinion as T3 and reverse T3. These are the most important ones. With that, we can kind of get an idea if, we can kind of connect the dots. But as always, you need to go to a provider who knows how to connect the dots, who's looking at optimal values, not normal values. Again, my TSH, my normal value that I like, the Goldilocks version or normal range, is 1 to 2, really small range. Normal, traditional normal, I believe, is 0.5 to 4.5. So it's pretty wide. Between 1 and 2 is ideal. And T4, you want free T4, free T3. Free T3 being what your body can use in the cells. And if T3 is not getting in the cells, it is not being used. Again, my personal experience, I have recently just switched from Thyroid, a T4 only medication. I was having lots of hypothyroid symptoms, swelling, just weird stuff. Couldn't get my rings off. I've been cold for my whole life. Raynaud's disease, purple fingers, now they're becoming painful, they're tingly. But my TSH has always been hyper suppressed because of my thyroid cancer. So I was hyperthyroid based on my TSH, which is what they've only ever done for 30 plus years, okay? Well, I was hypothyroid and my body just needed T3 because it was not converting the T4 that it needed into T3, and I was having all the symptoms of hypothyroid. Crazy now, I've been on the compounded T3, T4 medication for 3 weeks, and my hands are starting to get back to normal. My body temperature is starting to come up. I'm telling you guys, it has been 15, 20 years that I have always been freezing cold. That's starting to change. My rings are coming off. The swelling's coming down. I woke up this morning and now, mind you, all natural here, no work done. But I had like real big bags under my eyes, like from swelling for weeks. And it was the fluid retention because I did not have enough T3 in my cells. So I cannot stress enough how important, if you are on thyroid medication, make sure they get more than just a TSH. You need someone who can connect the dots and look a little bit deeper and not just scratch the surface. Of course, I have my root cause panel. If you want it, you let me know. It comes complete with an hour with me reviewing your labs and a whole educational thing. So you're sitting down listening to me teach you what your lab should be and what you should ask your doctor for. All right, I will see you Friday. I don't know what I'm cooking. I might be baking donuts. I found this recipe and I'm going to play with it tomorrow, get it to the macros I like. And, we need some healthy comfort food. All right. Thanks for staying with me. Have a good one.